Autist Army! Autist Army! Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the Autist Army. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I would highly recommend checking it out before you continue watching this video. Anyways, in this episode we're going to go over how we're going to create an ethno-state. Now most ethno-states promise that they're going to be socialist or communist, and since us autists are more honest than a typical neurotypical, I'm just going to come right out and say it's going to be state capitalism, because for some reason every socialist or communist system seems to devolve into state capitalism. In this ethno-state, because autistic people tend to get overstimulated very easily, the lights won't be that bright, and noise pollution will be taken a lot more seriously. Also, since we're trying to be more advanced, we're not going to use any physical money. Let's be honest here, physical money is dying out, and the presence of physical money causes inflation and deflation to be a lot more harder to control. Like all those rich people who have several bags of money that they hide to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. Our government will make sure that everybody has a phone, and they'll be a lot more durable than your average, neurotypical phone. Every phone will come with its own phone case, and we won't overcharge people to protect their dear, precious phones. How are we going to afford this? Well, we have a lot more money since we're not spending so much of it on money printing machines. I used to think we had to get rid of the penny, but fuck that shit, we have to get rid of all physical money in general. Since autistic people get more easily stimulated by a lot of other things such as temperature, we're going to try to build this ethno-state somewhere close to San Diego. Because we're going to be in America, we're going to be surrounded by enemies, so military service will be mandatory. We're going to do the whole North Korean thing. Now I know what some of you are thinking, an army full of autistic peoples doesn't sound like such the best idea ever. And while it would be absolutely hilarious to get autistic people to fight on the front lines and use their autistic screeching as a battle cry, I think we should focus our military autistic efforts more on strategy, drone development, and of course new weapons of mass destruction. Because we have so many specialists in our ethno-state, building new weapons of mass destruction should be a piece of cake. But we'll go over our military more in a different episode. For now, let's just focus on the ethno-state. As you guys know, autism is a very broad spectrum. There are autistic people who are absolute geniuses, and others who can barely function in normal society. Our school system will make sure that those with low skills will find, low-skill jobs, and those who are absolute geniuses to be put into special courses, and develop new ideas and inventions so our society can advance. But since our society is going to have more specialists than people who are all-arounders, we're going to get rid of the old, tired college system and replace it with more trade schools. I don't think I need to tell you guys just how good our train development program will be. Developing trains for our public transport system will of course be at the top of our priority list, because autistic people are great at working on trains, but because of their poorer than average motor skills, driving will of course be a luxury. But our focus on public transport will be so good, we're gonna make New York look like New Hampshire in comparison. So a physical moneyless society with a big focus on public transport system certainly seems alright for our economy, but what are we gonna do socially? First of all, we're gonna have no form of systemic racism, because why would you need to discriminate against someone with a different skin color than you, when you can discriminate against someone with a different brain type than you? And by that, I mean we're only gonna discriminate against neurotypicals. Of course, we're going to accept trans people into our society and military, because trans people tend to be more autistic than cis people. You ever wonder why so many speedrunners are transitioning? That's why. Also, LGBT people tend to be good for a capitalist society. Oh my god, I changed my mind. We're not going to be state capitalist, we're going to be state pink capitalist. Forget hating on Nazis and communists, our enemies are going to be Nazbols.
Hello, it is I, the Nazbol, culturally far right, economically far left. And who are you? Oh, hello Nazbol, I'm pink capitalism, culturally far left, but economically far right. Wow, that is by far the worst shit I have ever seen.
Okay, we went over race and sexuality, but what about gender? Well, here's where things get a lot more complicated, because there's only about 1/5 of autistic women as there are autistic men. But the autistic trait is more dominant in females, so how do we go about this? Well, first let's talk about abortion, and I'm going to take a neutral stance on abortion, and by that, I mean people are only going to be allowed to abort male fetuses, because we're going to need to have a lot more females in our society. You know, when you get down to it, it's kind of like the opposite of the Chinese mandate. We'll probably also really need to focus on developing artificial wombs for this society to work, so, autistic scientists, get on that. While I'm not the biggest fan of polyamory or polygamous relationships, we might have a few poly relationships at the start of our society. We'll also make it easier for male neurotypical immigrants to come into our society. That way their offspring is much more likely to be autistic if they breed with an autistic female. So we won't have gender equality at first, but eventually we'll get there. We'll of course have a form of UBI, but we're gonna call it autistic bucks. And since autistic people tend to be better accountants than neurotypical people, we don't have to worry about our economy fucking up too much. I'm sure our autistic society will be great with handling money. When you really get down to it, the economy is just one big puzzle with a lot of pieces that don't fit. And what's better at solving puzzles than an autistic person? Also, all drugs will be legal. Except for crocodile, of course. Because let's be honest here, banning things don't work, people are gonna do drugs anyways. And if we let the poor smoke a ton of weed, they're less likely to have offspring. More drugs means more medicine, and more medicine means more medication. Medication that we need to help out our autistic citizens. As an autistic person, I know how hard it is to fall asleep without smoking some of that dope. You feeling anxious? Just have a little bit of that devil's cabbage. You have trouble getting up in the morning? Just sniff some of that angel dust. Also, if our ethno-state is close to San Diego, we gotta do something to keep the drug cartel out. And let's be honest here, in an autistic society, our animation programs are gonna be off the wall. We're gonna give South Korea some competition. And drugs make cartoons all the better. Plus, if people overdose or almost overdose or having any problems due to drugs, they'll be less scared to go to the doctor's office. And we can put a tax on drugs similar to how people in America put taxes on cigarettes and alcohol. That way we'll be able to raise money for our hospital systems. But to save money on our hospital systems, we're not going to have too many physical sports. I mean, let's be honest here, us autistic people don't exactly have the best motor skills. But that doesn't mean we're not going to have any sports at all. We're of course going to have e-sports, like StarCraft and other things. We're going to be so good at e-sports, we're going to give South Korea some competition. Now of course, to end this off, we're going to be talking about how we're going to hold our election systems. In order to run, every election cycle will come out with a new complex puzzle, and if you can solve it, then you can run for office. Every time we come down to a two-party system, we'll destroy those two parties and start all over again. That way, people will have the chance to vote for the things they actually give a shit about, and they don't always have to vote for the candidate they hate the least.